The biggest concern that we must have as Kenyans is the valuation at which the government is proposing to exit 15% stake in Safaricom. Because they want to sell per share at 34 shillings. And if you look at the recent past, including last week, Safaricom share touched even 30, past 30 last week. But in the last 5 years, and especially in 2021, Safaricom share was above 45 shillings in August of 2021. And when you are valuing on how to buy or sell a company, you as the seller must get the best deal in terms of the price. But it looks like the people who are representing the people of Kenya in government in this discussion and sale, they actually sided with the buyers. And they decided to sell Safaricom for a song. Because a company that was trading at 45 shillings per share in 2021, the government is unashamedly telling Kenyans that they want to sell the same company at 34 shillings today. Most of the companies listed in the NSC as we talk are selling, and most of them, including banks, are selling past the 2021 levels. But now we want to give a discount based on the 2021 valuation of a 25% discount to the current buyers. And possibly this should be investigated. Why? Even after so many companies have been recording even 200% increase, Safaricom share, even with the bullish market, has not matched many of the companies in terms of the rise in share price. Probably there was a deliberate suppression of the share. And all I want to say is that the government is underselling Safaricom, and it is to the detriment of all Kenyans. Secondly, the proposal, because I've been there and I have in some of these discussions before, and especially when Kenya was seeking to get optimal value for the stake. The best thing in terms of the sale of Safaricom was first of all to divide Safaricom into 3 companies. Before the sale, you have the telco as Safaricom, you have a tower company, and you have Safaricom Financial Services. Because once you do that divestiture, the sum of the 3 would by all means be bigger in terms of value than the whole that is called Safaricom. And therefore, the government just became quick because of next year's elections to undersell Kenyan assets, because they want they want Kenyans to see that something is being done in terms of development, but the cost is very high today and in the future. The other thing that is very funny about this transaction, and I pity the people in the government who represented the people of Kenya in this transaction and this deal. I've been talking about something called securitization, illegal debts. This deal of GOK sale of the stake of Safaricom also is riddled with the same illegal debts. Because beyond the consideration of 34 shillings per share, the government is doing something else that has never been done in the world. They are collecting dividends in advance. Basically, they are telling the sellers, the buyers, yes, pay us for our stake, but instead of negotiating a better price and value for Kenyans, they have already mortgaged the dividend that the National Treasury would have gotten in the next many years. 40 billion shillings out of the consideration is actually dividends collected in advance. In other words, securitizing dividends. It is important for Kenyans to know these things. And also, for Kenyans to know that the people we are sending to negotiate for us as Kenyans are either putting their self-interest first and therefore undercutting what we should get as value as Kenyans, or they are just plainly incompetent. On the same kind of sales and divestitures that have been happening, it is important for us as Kenyans to understand the difference, and the people in the National Treasury and government to understand that there is a difference between privatizing a public organization or company an outright sale. Privatizing is when you give up even control for efficiency to percolate in the company. But the kind of thing we are seeing in Safaricom is not a privatization. It cannot pass as such. This is an outright sale because already Safaricom was already a private company. It's not a parastatal. And therefore it is just purely for revenue raising that it is happening. The problem is, even as revenue raising, Kenyans are not getting value for their money, and Kenyans are not getting the appropriate price and valuation for Safaricom, for GOK stake in Safaricom PLC. And my brothers and sisters here from the media, I want to request you, because whatever happens in Kenya now will affect all of us. It is important we zoom into all the transactions that are happening in Kenya of late. I saw the other day a Tanzanian company with a Kenyan unit called Karahari Cement buying the stake in East African Portland Cement that belonged to NSSF, again taking it for a song. Why is this massive interference with NSSF? That a person who is not Kenyan can see value in East African Portland Cement that NSSF, that is investing workers' resources, cannot see in a local company. We must be vigilant. Otherwise, within a very short time, we are all going to regret as Kenyans, because we'll have nothing to hold on to. Everything will have been torn down in terms of sold for nothing, and you'll have no fallback position. And on the same, I have been saying, and I want to repeat, there is a new jargon in town called infrastructure fund. Infrastructure fund is only two things, and Kenyans should know that. One was sale of Safaricom, which is now Adawi. Number two is more borrowing. So anyone who needs to know what infrastructure fund is, just keep on watching the lips of everyone talking about it and match with the actions. It is either sale of government assets at a discount, definitely, or more borrowing. And these things are important. And I don't think there is something more important than the economy of Kenya to all of us. Look at it this way. Kenya has already taken a loan using fuel levy. The money you pay for fuel levy has already been collected in advance for the next 7 years, and they want to take another one that will take us for the next 10 years. Meaning, the tax you are going to pay for the next 7 years has been collected today and spent. The unfortunate thing, and especially around that fund, is that local institutions, and especially banks, took part, and especially banks where GOK has a stake or controls. That we are collecting taxes because levy is like tax. The money that was to construct roads for the next 7 years has already been collected as we talk. I don't know whether I'm making sense, because you need to understand that because the government is looking at 2027 and nothing else, they are staking the future of this country in the name of elections. So we want to do everything that Kenyans can see. It doesn't matter whether we are getting into an abyss, and it doesn't matter whether we are going to recover from it. So we have taken fuel levy that was to be collected by Kenya for the next 7 years. That money has already been spent. Secondly, tourism fund has already been securitized or in the process of being securitized. The process has already kicked off. So when you see Bomas of Kenya coming up, that is again an illegal loan, because all this securitization business is illegal. I've been talking about Talanta Fund, and you may wonder why there is no person in government giving a rejoinder. Because if there are no facts, then you should give the facts as the National Treasury. That this year, we borrowed 44.5 billion Kenya shillings where Kenya is going to pay an interest rate or an interest sum of 100 billion Kenya shillings in the next 15 years. Can you imagine that? Just because we want claps, now we take a loan of 44.5 billion shillings where the government is going to pay interest rate quantum of 100 billion in 15 years. So the Talanta Stadium, you see, the cost is not 44.5 billion. And I've been repeating this and I want to repeat. The real cost is over 140 billion Kenya shillings. So we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans whether these are the kind of decisions that we want made for our economy. Now, they're in the process now of securitizing your housing levy. That the housing levy Kenyans are paying so that they remove the talk of whether it can be reduced or not. The government is again kicking off the process of securitizing. Securitizing is just a heavy word to confuse Kenyans. Of borrowing through mortgaging the housing levy. So they are collecting it in advance. Now, what this is doing to the economy, and it is deliberate, the government is running away from budget. They want to control development in another book called Infrastructure Fund. And I just want to repeat, Infrastructure Fund is only a composition of two things. Sale of government assets, including Safaricom, and more borrowing. All the other hurabalo you hear, the bottom line is that. Now, let me interest you something else as I finish. As we talk with you here, Kenya is borrowing 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings in the official book of loans. 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings per year in the official loan book. So Kenya is borrowing 3.5 billion shillings every day, including today. By end of today, Kenya will have borrowed a net of 3.5 billion. And a net here, I mean, I have not included the money the government is borrowing to pay previous loans. That is called refinancing. I have not added. The figure I am giving is purely net debt. To put it into context, President Kibaki in his 10 years borrowed a net of 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings in 10 years. So we are borrowing in 1 year what Kibaki borrowed in 10 years. It is important for Kenyans to keep on knowing these things. Because this kind of recklessness cannot go for too long. And we have very recent case scenarios. We have Senegal, which is now in red. 2 guys elected very popularly last year, Diomaye Faye and Osman Sonko, themselves hata hawasikizani wenyewe. Because by the time they took over, there were illegal debts like securitization amounting to 13 billion US dollars. Illegal ones, taken off the book. Like Talanta Fund, like securitization, like securitization of dividends, like the government is doing in the sale of Safaricom, and the rest. We can learn from Zambia. We can learn from Sri Lanka that it is a slippery path we are taking our country into. We can learn from Ghana. Ghana was unable to service debts. So what did they do? They called all the government creditors and they told them, if you have lent the government $1 million shillings, either through buying a board or a T-bill, the government called them and told them, we no longer owe you 1 million. We owe you 70% of that. End of story. Can you imagine? So the route we are taking will definitely lead us there. And I'm calling upon the government. Let us not take Kenyans' future on the general election in a year to come or so. There'll be Kenya after 2027. And Kenyans, ask yourself, why is the government, if you collect dividends for the next 5 years, So, in the mind of government, there'll be no Kenya in the next 5 years or what? When you take fuel levy to be collected in Kenya for the next 7 years to build roads, are you telling us there'll be no roads in Kenya to be built? I have indicated that Kenya is borrowing 1.25 trillion shillings every year. But even the development that we are seeing, including the expansion of Nairobi-Nakuru Highway, we now have had to force NSSF to invest workers' resources in that road, while the government knows for sure it will never break even. Now that we are selling a stake in Safaricom, why can't the government provide that road for free to all the people in the western side of this country? Must we package it as a commercial project? Now that we have another source of the sale of Safaricom stake, why can't the government invest some of this money into a road, and especially Nairobi Mausamet Road? Why? That a Kenyan in the western part of this country, from Nakuru all the way, who pays pay, who pays VAT, who pays fuel levy, again is made by government to build their own road. Because paying toll is basically government abdicating its job to provide public goods and telling Kenyans, tumewaletea hawa watu mujisort mujenge nao barabara. That's basically what the government has done in that road. And we are going to keep on talking about this issue, that the people from Nakuru all the way deserve, like any other Kenyan, to use that road for free without tolling. Because we are borrowing every day. We are borrowing both in the book and off the book. We are now selling government stakes. Then why again make Kenyans to pay for the road? I have also heard the drums of every day. They are beaten about the expansion of the road from Pagani, Muthaiga, Kiambu, Duberi. And it has now come up again. I want to request you, my brothers and sisters, go to your own files in terms of the media files, previous ones. And you'll see that you covered the issue of the expansion of that road in 2021 and 2022. If you go to the files, even Google now, you realize that the expansion of Pagani, Muthaiga, Kiambu, Duberi Road was conceptualized and completed in 2022. But the government had to wait until we are near elections to beat the drums. The government should actually be apologizing to the people of Kiambu for delaying the road for 3 years. Because that road was ready to be built in the last 3 years. But of course, the convenience of our politics had to have it delayed. Very lastly, now that we are selling stakes, and I want to tell you for sure, Safaricom PLC, the government is now selling 15%. You can be sure before elections, they will have sold the other stake, some of it. And I cannot actually tell you, some of it they will actually sell to NSSF. Because you don't need to have been inside government for you to learn how the government is thinking. The government is lazy to grow the economy. Because when you grow the economy, it is when you get revenues to support the growth of infrastructure. And since there is no growth in the economy, so we are now looking for shortcuts. And I can tell you for sure, this is just the beginning. They'll divest even from the other stake. Because no one wants to bother. Hakuna mtu anataka kuchoka kufikiria, akifanya maamuzi. Naona Safaricom iko pesa uza. You now hear about selling a stake in KCB, where the government has around 19%. Very soon, you'll also hear the same in the energy sector. And that's not even the problem. The problem is that we are selling these assets for a song. And I want to repeat because I am finishing. There is no way the government can purport to sell Safaricom at a valuation of less than 2.5 trillion. There is no way, other than if there is self-interest or incompetence on the side of government. And I have enumerated again, the best way was for the government, first of all, to foster divestiture within Safaricom, create 3 entities, value them separately, and then sell them separately if you have to sell. Very last, we are now on a drive. We are being taken on a rough drive of political messaging. These grand terms you are hearing, infrastructure fund and big money being mentioned, it is to make Kenyans not ask the basic questions. Before we are told about trillions and the rest, can the government first of all do the basics? We are now in December. The government, unless they recede, they have already purported to want to increase school fees for day scholars from January. So on one side, we are thinking about trillions. On the other side, you are abdicating from supporting free basic education. Our JSS brothers and sisters, they require very little money to be confirmed into permanent and pensionable terms. They already had a contract for 1 year to intern in the JSS institutions. But instead of addressing such a small issue, now we are doing political messaging by mentioning billions and infrastructure fund so that Kenyans don't ask us real questions about real issues. It's like when you can go to your home today, Stephen Leto, and you call a baraza of your home, or Mwaneki, or Business Daily. You call a baraza at your home, and you tell your kin or your family members that you want to go to the moon, and you are going together with them. So they actually forget to ask you about food for that day, because you've already sold a grandiose idea. Unfortunately, within a day or two, they start telling you, okay, we are still going, but where is food? So the basics for this country, one of the basics is basic education. Before we talk about all those other things, the government must give assurance through writing that day scholars in Kenya from January will get an opportunity to go to school without the handicap of finances, as it has been before. As I close, let me take you the last sentence on something else, because this grandiose communication of politics can make Kenyans get lost. Now, we are building highways to toll without any alternative. It has never happened in Kenya since independence. Because even where there is a toll road, there are alternatives. It is the first time in Kenya we are doing an experiment to have Kenyans pay for using a road and deny them an opportunity for an alternative. That's one. It is also the first time in Kenya we are doing off-the-book borrowing through Talanta Board and the rest. It is also the first time we are securitizing revenues to be collected by the country for the next many years. But we are sold a grandiose idea. This is the fact. Kenya has always built stadiums. We have Nyayo Stadium, we have Kasarani. We never took an illegal board, but Kenya built when the economy was quite small. Kenya has always had tarmac roads. Even where we are building the toll road from Nairobi to Nakuru, there is a road. Not that there is no road, there is. And it was built by Kenyans through taxes. And the government never had to take an illegal loan called securitization. You can live here in Nairobi, go to Isiolo, go to Marsabit, and go to Moyale border. There is a tarmac road there, smooth one, a highway. You don't pay to use. It was built by Kenyans, by the previous governments. You can live here, go to Hispania border all the way to Kuria in Migori. All the way it is tarmac. We never took an illegal loan. We never took a securitization. And when Kenya was a smaller economy, we still managed. You can live here and go all the way to Kitengela and go all the way to our border with Tanzania on the other side. Again, there is a tarmac road there. No grandiose communication. from government. Government humbly built without making Kenyans to pay. You can leave here, go to Mombasa. There is already a tarmac road. So what I'm saying, you know, the way the government is defending itself. Oh, we are doing these things to build roads. Okay, fine. All the other governments build roads, but they never took reckless loans and illegal loans. That's what we are saying. It's not the first time Kenya is building stadiums. We have always built stadiums or stadias. So that is my concern. And I request Kenyans of goodwill, including LSK, ISPAC, the civil society, and all leaders, including the media. The things we are talking about are apolitical from where I start. It doesn't matter who becomes what. But if you securitize future revenue, we are choking Kenya today and in the future. Please let us take this as our burden. Because we may champion for the freedoms of Kenyans, the way we do, like LSK does. But in a collapsed economy, there'll be nothing to talk about. So I challenge all of us, let us please do our bit, because the consequences of these things and experiments will be very dire for our economy. Thank you very much.